Hello, everyone. It has been rightly said by Jim Rohn that reading is essential for those who would like to rise from the ordinary. And that's the reason why we are here. I am sure that 3 or 4 months into your CLAT preparation, you already know the importance of why it is so essential to become a reader. Because reading helps you to comprehend. That is the most important step when it comes to CLAT examination, right? So I'm not really here to talk to you about the importance or emphasis of reading. I just want you to actually understand why it is so important to become a strategic reader. Because obviously, if you are not somebody who is a strategic reader, then that means you're missing out on great many important details. So today we are going to discuss certain methods which you can start incorporating so that you can, enhance the overall experience of you being a reader. The first technique that we are going to discuss here is SQ3R method. I know it's a very fancy name, but it simply talks about survey, question, read, recite, review, which is very, very essential because if you do not interact with your text, interact का मतलब होता है आपको जो भी आपके सामने टेक्स्ट है उससे अगर आपने एक क्लियर कनेक्शन नहीं एस्टैब्लिश किया then you will be a very detached reader. Secondly, your comprehension wouldn't be at par. So it's very important that you know and you learn how to survey, question, read, recite, and review your text. Survey का मतलब होता है when you're simply going through the passage so that you can answer few important things like what is the genre? Is the genre of your choice? Do you want to go ahead with reading that passage? Secondly, any difficult words that you come across or any alien concepts which are brand new to you. अगर ऐसी चीजें दिख रही हैं आपको तो then I would definitely suggest you to not start your paper with that particular passage because this is an unfamiliar territory for you. But yeah, definitely when you are reading it at your own pace, you should definitely deep dive into understanding the difficult concepts, the difficult terminology, so that you become a better reader. The next step is question. Question का मतलब ये होता है कि when you are reading something, you should be able to answer certain basic questions like the what, the when, the how, the where. अगर ये भी आंसर्स हमें नहीं मिल पा रहे हैं तो इसका मतलब ही ये है कि you are supposed to reread the text. The first time wasn't enough. The next step is obviously reading and reading thoroughly. और अगर हम एक active reader नहीं है तो you are going to actually end up snoozing throughout the text. And if you are snoozing and dozing, then that also means that you are not going to understand what's given there. तो इसीलिए important है that when you are reading, you are interacting with that text. You are asking yourself certain relevant questions. You are able to answer those relevant questions. The next step is you are going to recite. Recite does not mean to speak loudly whatever you have learned in the text. It only means that you are trying to revise the concepts in your head so that it helps you to remember that information so that when it comes to giving the answers to the questions you are better prepared. So recite का मतलब जोर जोर से चिल्ला के किसी चीज को बोलना नहीं होता है. It simply means that you are rethinking about whatever you have learned in the given text in your head. Okay, and the last step is obviously review. Review का मतलब होता है evaluation. मतलब कि अगर मैंने कुछ side notes या points बनाए हुए हैं, whether they are in consonance with what is given in the passage. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि मैं अपने thoughts उस text में लाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ. अगर ऐसा है तो obviously you are supposed to discard such information which is your own information because nobody really cares about what the reader is thinking. Here, when you're solving a passage, the writer's word is the last word. ठीक है? So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about survey, question, read, recite, review. As you can read it here, it's a structured approach to reading that involves previewing the material, generating questions, actively reading while seeking answers. Moving on to the second step, which is the Pomodoro Technique. I know that most of you might have already heard of Pomodoro Technique. Now, this is not really an exclusive technique when it comes to reading, but it definitely helps you to, divide your time in a very judicious manner. If you are writing your exam, अगर आपको time पे ही control नहीं है, तो then you are going to struggle throughout the paper, which should not happen. Actually, the Pomodoro technique, as you can very well see, it helps you streamline your time by involving, breakages. और आप बोल सकते हो कि you take certain intervals or pauses after a good chunk of quality preparation. इसका मतलब ये है कि मैंने 20-25 minutes के लिए एक टेक्स्ट पे फोकस किया and after that I have taken an interval. Now that will actually help you first of all with your attention span. And given the profuse usage of mobile phones, smartphones, I think we already are very aware कि हमारा जो attention span है it kind of resembles a goldfish now, right? So in order to develop that interest and attention span, this particular technique can really be useful for you when you kind of, bifurcate different passages in time within certain time intervals. Okay, so moving on to the next technique, which is RAP method, and RAP stands for read, ask, put. Now this is very similar to SQ3R, but यहाँ पे बात ये है कि it actually asks for your accountability. What does that mean? तो आपने एक text read किया, but then you have asked yourself certain questions. But once you have asked yourself certain questions, are you able to synthesize the answers of that? Secondly, are you able to paraphrase the entire text? देखो मैं हमेशा यही बोलती हूँ कि reading should not be done for the sake of reading. Reading should be done with the intention that if somebody asks me about this particular passage, I should be so thorough in explanation जो कि जिसने भी सामने वाले ने आपसे पूछा हो कि इस पैसेज में क्या है उसको कंप्लीटली समझ में आ जाए कि व्हाट इज द सब्जेक्ट मैटर ऑफ दिस गिवन पैसेज. सो दैट शुड बी द आइडिया. रीड इस तरीके से करो कि जब समझाने की बात आए तो 100% आप उस चीज को समझा सको. सो एग्जैक्टली दैट्स व्हाट दे आर सीकिंग ऑफ यू इन RAP, which stands for read, ask, put. Now, this method involves reading a passage, asking oneself questions about the material, and then summarizing or paraphrasing the main points. Very similar to SQ3R, as I've already told you. But again, it helps you with active engagement with the text, okay, which is of prime importance. Because when and once you start to lose interest, your understanding also goes out of the window. इसीलिए बहुत important है कि you start incorporating these techniques. Moving on to our next technique, which is mind mapping. Generally, most of the successful people, they kind of use mind mapping in order to retain information for a longer period of time. And I generally use it when I'm reading passages which are primarily related to science and tech, or maybe astronomy, जिसमें हमें स्पेस के बारे में ज़्यादा चीज़ें पता चलती हैं, क्योंकि through diagrams or through flowcharts, I think it's very easy to actually remember that information. Even in passages where pros and cons are discussed, आप simply वहाँ पे एक box में title लिख सकते हो and you can just subdivide it into two categories, the pros and the cons, and you can just simply write the pros and the cons, and it gives you a very clear idea of the information which has been shared by the writer. So mind mapping is very, very important. And it's again something which is not very specific to reading, but it's actually a kind of visual organization which will help you to remember information. क्योंकि बार बार circle back करने का time नहीं है हमारे पास. So this will actually be a very efficient technique which will help you save a lot of time. And as you can see, it can help you make connections between ideas and overall enhance your comprehension and retention. Okay? So moving to the next technique, which is chunking. Chunking is another cognitive process in which information is broken down into smaller paragraphs. For example, you are reading a passage which is somewhere around 500 to 1000 words long. अब obviously उसमें information भी बहुत ज़्यादा होगी, and maybe you will not be able to remember each and every important thing. So सबसे पहले तो हमें ये करना है कि you need to divide into more manageable paragraphs. So information, basically division of information in a more manageable way, then reading and going through it, then asking yourself questions related to that particular paragraph. That's how you're going to, help yourself in able to memorize and remember information for a great duration of time. So chunking, as you can very well see here, it's to break down information into more manageable units or chunks to improve memory and understanding. It actually helps you to easily process the information. Process का मतलब ये होता है कि दिन भर में हमें 100 या more than 100 type of new information मिलती रहती है. But the thing is सारी चीजें हमें याद नहीं रहती है. Why? Because some of the information we discard as soon as we hear it. Some of the information उस समय के लिए तो याद रहती है, but थोड़ी देर बाद भूल जाते हो, because we don't really recite it or revise it. And when it comes to certain, I would say, big chunks of information which are needed to be remembered, इसके लिए ये चंकिंग जरूर आपको हेल्प कर सकती है. ठीक है. सो एट द एंड ऑफ द डे, इफ यू आर somebody who can retain information, that means you are able to solve your comprehension in lesser amount of time. Okay. And finally, the last step, which is the most important step, in order to be a better reader, diversity is the most important thing. And I might have talked about diversity in my previous videos also. Diverse reading is a mandatory or a compulsory thing, for the simple reason, क्योंकि passages तो कहीं से भी आ सकते हैं. It can be a category of your choice, and it can be a category of I would say a choice which is very formidable for you, very scary. So हमें तो हर चीज के लिए ही prepared रहना है. और अगर मुझे हर चीज के लिए prepared रहना है, तो इसका मतलब है my first hand experience with different categories of text should also be I would say supreme, should also be something which is substantial. या कंसिडरेबल अमाउंट ऑफ टेक्स्ट मेरी आंखों के सामने से निकल चुके हैं, और उसके बाद मेरे लिए हर ही जो टेक्स्ट जो मुझे मॉक्स में दिखता है या पेपर में दिखता है वो कुछ नया नहीं लगता है. This will only happen when you read diversely, when you actually challenge yourself with the texts which are less interesting to you. क्योंकि देखो क्या है, हम सभी के कुछ ना कुछ प्रेफरेंसेस तो होते ही हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आई पर्सनली लव रीडिंग फिक्शन, बट 90% ऑफ द पैसेजेस जरूरी तो नहीं है कि फिक्शन पे ही आए. इट कैन बी एन अमेलगमेशन ऑफ बोथ फिक्शन नॉन फिक्शन, राइट? So I need to be good at everything, and in order to be good at everything, I need to actually challenge my brain, right? So very, very important that you read diversely. You read about history, psychology, philosophy, literary passages, legally inclined passages, geopolitical, biotech, सारी issues के बारे में आपको first hand information तो होनी ही चाहिए. You should be very familiar with the terminology related to these specific fields. And actually, if you start, working on this particular aspect, you will see a dramatic, I would say, dramatic improvement in the way you read. So that's it from my side, everybody. Thank you so much for actually taking out the time to watch this video. And yeah, that's it from my side. I hope you start to, incorporate these techniques, and do let me know whether this has helped you or not in the comment box later. Thank you so much. Bye bye.